In a world where inflation silently eats away at your paycheck, have you ever stopped to wonder where the money really goes? We are told that massive military spending is the price of freedom, but the economic impacts tell a different, darker story. While families struggle with rising costs, a hidden economy thrives on the perpetual state of global conflict. This is about the hidden costs of war, a defense budget that has grown beyond scrutiny, and audit-proof contracts that defy logic. It's a business model built on fear, designed to shape fiscal policy and ensure the cash flow never stops. We see infrastructure crumble, while trillions are poured into a machine that profits from instability. This isn't just government spending, it's a systemic transfer of wealth that affects your savings, your future, and your security. It is time to look past the headlines and understand the economic inequality driven by this invisible tax. I'm going to show you how the machine works, who really benefits, and why they need you to stay afraid. Wake up. It's time to follow the money.
What if the reason your savings lose value every year has nothing to do with the economy and everything to do with a business model built on permanent war? Most Americans believe inflation is a natural consequence of progress, something we must accept as the cost of modern life. But what if I told you that behind every missile launched, every defense contract signed, and every conflict prolonged, there's a financial machine designed to extract wealth directly from your paycheck without you ever realizing it? This isn't about conspiracy theories. This is about documented patterns, audit-proof budgets, and a system so entrenched that questioning it feels almost unpatriotic. Have you ever stopped to wonder why we spend more on defense than the next 10 countries combined, yet somehow our infrastructure crumbles and our national debt skyrockets into the trillions? The answer lies in what I call the invisible tax, a mechanism where your purchasing power is silently transferred to corporations and banks that profit regardless of whether wars are won or lost. You've been told that national security requires sacrifice, but what you haven't been told is who profits from that sacrifice and how deeply their interests are woven into the fabric of American fiscal policy. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely change how you see your country's relationship with money, power, and endless conflict. Before we go deeper into how this machine actually works, I need to ask you something directly. If this conversation resonates with you, if something about what you're hearing feels uncomfortably true, take 10 seconds right now to hit that like button and subscribe. Channels that expose financial systems like this don't survive on ad revenue alone. They survive because people like you decide they matter. The algorithm doesn't favor content that questions where trillions of dollars actually go, which means your engagement is literally what keeps this investigation alive. And here's what I really want to know. Be honest with yourself. Do you feel richer, safer, or more secure after 2 decades of endless conflict? Or do you feel like your dollar buys less, your future feels more uncertain, and the promises made never quite materialize? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because your perspective matters more than you think. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding how we got here changes everything about how you see the world today. The system we're living under didn't appear overnight. It was built deliberately, brick by brick, over centuries, by people who understood one fundamental truth. War is the single most profitable enterprise in human history, not because of what it destroys, but because of what it demands. Governments at war will borrow any amount, pay any interest rate, and mortgage their entire future just to survive the present moment. And the people who control that credit? They become more powerful than kings. Go back to the early 1800s, during the Napoleonic Wars. While entire nations were bleeding out on battlefields across Europe, a family of bankers named Rothschild was quietly financing both sides of the conflict. They moved gold across borders, issued bonds to desperate monarchs, and when the smoke cleared, they owned a piece of every government still standing. In Britain, they pioneered something called consols, perpetual bonds that never matured, only paid interest forever. Think about that for a second. A debt that never ends, a revenue stream that outlives empires. From that moment on, war stopped being a tragedy and became a business plan. But here's where it gets personal for Americans. For most of our history, we understood war as something you mobilized for, fought, and then came home from. Factories converted. Soldiers returned. Life resumed. That all changed in 1961, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a five-star general who had commanded millions of troops in World War II, stood before the nation and issued a warning that most people ignored. He didn't speak like a politician. He spoke like someone who had seen the machine from the inside and knew exactly where it was headed. He warned us about the rise of what he called the military-industrial complex, a permanent fusion of government power and corporate profit, an industry so vast and so entrenched that it would begin to shape policy not based on what kept us safe, but on what kept the contracts flowing. Before Eisenhower's warning, defense companies ramped up during wartime and scaled back during peace. After his warning, something shifted. The industry realized it didn't need actual wars to justify its existence. It just needed the permanent threat of war. It needed tension, enemies, crises, anything that kept the budget growing and the stock prices climbing. Peace became the enemy of profit. Stability became a liability. And from that point forward, every conflict, every intervention, every prolonged occupation started to look less like strategy and more like scheduled maintenance for a business model that requires blood to stay solvent. That's the transformation most people never see. We're taught to view military spending as patriotic duty, but we're never asked to follow the money. We're never shown who actually benefits when another $1 trillion disappears into the Pentagon's budget with no audit, no accountability, and no explanation. If this is starting to make sense to you, drop a comment and just write, "I see it now." Now I want to go even deeper into how this actually works on you personally every single day. Because this isn't just about history or policy. This is about how your fear has been weaponized into a business model. The system doesn't need your consent, it just needs your silence. And it gets that silence by making sure you're always just afraid enough to keep paying without asking questions. Here's the psychological trap they've perfected over decades. Every time you turn on the news and hear about a new threat, a rising adversary, an unstable region, or a terror cell plotting in the shadows, you're not just being informed. You're being primed. You're being conditioned to accept that massive defense budgets are non-negotiable, that cutting military spending is somehow unpatriotic, and that questioning where trillions of dollars go is dangerous or naive. This isn't accident. This is strategy. In the corporate world, they call it monthly recurring revenue. You create a product people think they can't live without, and they pay for it forever. In the world of defense spending, they've created a threat people think they can't survive without protection from, and the payment never stops. Think about what happened after the war on terror started winding down. For 20 years, the American public was told that radical terrorism was the existential threat of our generation. Trillions were spent. Entire countries were destabilized. And then, almost overnight, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't about terrorists anymore. It was about great power competition. China became the new bogeyman. Russia became the new Cold War adversary. The faces changed, but the budget didn't shrink. It grew, because the industry doesn't need real threats. It just needs the perception of threat. It needs you to believe that there's always someone out there who wants to destroy your way of life, and the only thing standing between you and catastrophe is another $100 billion in next-generation fighter jets. But the genius of this system isn't just in the fear. It's in the way they've made it politically untouchable. Defense contracts aren't just handed to a few massive corporations in a couple of states. They're deliberately spread across hundreds of congressional districts, employing thousands of people in nearly every corner of the country. So when a politician even suggests cutting the defense budget, they're not just challenging national security policy. They're threatening jobs in their own district. They're threatening the livelihoods of their own constituents. And the moment they do that, they're labeled as weak, irresponsible, or even treasonous. It's a sunk cost fallacy on a national scale. We've invested so much, employed so many, built so much infrastructure around this industry that dismantling it feels impossible, even when it's bleeding us dry. This is the locked door. You can see it. You can feel it. But the moment you try to open it, every alarm in the system goes off, and you're told you're putting everyone at risk. Meanwhile, the people profiting from this structure are the same ones funding the think tanks that write the policy papers, the same ones sitting on the boards of the companies receiving the contracts, the same ones rotating between government positions and corporate executive suites. It's not corruption in the traditional sense. It's just how the machine was designed to run, and it runs on your tax dollars, your purchasing power, and your unquestioning belief that this is all somehow necessary. Every time you feel that knot in your stomach after watching the evening news, someone just secured another multi-billion-dollar contract. Every time you hear that we need to stay vigilant or maintain readiness, what you're really hearing is the sound of wealth being transferred from your future to someone else's quarterly earnings report. If you're starting to see how deep this goes, drop a comment and write, "The fear is the product." Now I want to go even deeper into what this actually costs you, because the numbers they throw around in budget hearings don't mean anything until you see them in your own life. When they say the defense budget is $800 billion, your brain can't process that. It's too big. It's abstract. But when you realize that every dollar of that budget is a dollar that could have fixed a bridge in your town, funded a school in your neighborhood, or lowered your taxes, it starts to get real. And when you see how much of that money simply vanishes into thin air with zero accountability, it stops being about policy and starts being about theft. Between 2020 and 2024, private defense contractors were handed over $2.4 trillion in Pentagon contracts. That's trillion, with a T. But here's the part that should make your blood boil. The Department of Defense has failed its financial audit for 6 consecutive years. They cannot account for over $3.8 trillion in assets. Read that again. Nearly $4 trillion gone, with no explanation, no accountability, and no consequences. In any other industry, this would be investigated as fraud. Executives would be in handcuffs, companies would be shut down. But in the defense sector, this is just Tuesday. Business as usual. The money flows, the contracts get signed, and nobody asks where it all went. And it's not just the big picture. It's the details that reveal the true nature of the scam. The Pentagon has been caught paying over $10,000 for a metal washer that you can buy at a hardware store for $13. They paid $1,678 for a single nut that's worth 32 cents. These aren't mistakes. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a feature of the system. It's a mechanism designed to transfer public tax money into private hands without anyone watching. They call it cost-plus contracting, where companies get paid based on how much they spend, not on what they deliver. So there's no incentive to be efficient. There's every incentive to bloat, to delay, to complicate, because the more it costs, the more they make. But the real revelation is how they fund all of this without you noticing. They use what insiders call the ghost budget. Instead of going through normal budget caps and congressional oversight, they classify military spending as emergency supplementals. Wars that have been going on for 2 decades are still being funded through emergency measures, as if nobody saw them coming. And because these expenditures bypass the regular budget process, they don't show up in the same way. They're hidden in plain sight. And when the government doesn't have the cash to cover it, the Federal Reserve steps in and prints more money. That newly printed money doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It dilutes the value of every dollar you already have. It's inflation by design. You're not just paying for these wars through your taxes. You're paying for them every time you go to the grocery store and notice that your paycheck doesn't stretch as far as it used to. This is the bastardor truth nobody wants you to connect. The reason your savings lose value, the reason housing feels unaffordable, the reason everything costs more but your wages stay flat, it's all tied to a system that requires endless spending on conflicts that never seem to end. And the people profiting from this aren't the soldiers risking their lives. They're the executives, the shareholders, the lobbyists, and the politicians who rotate between government office and corporate boardrooms like it's a career track. The impact of this isn't just financial, it's generational. It's the erosion of trust, the normalization of waste, and the quiet acceptance that this is just how things work. But it doesn't have to be. If this is clicking for you, drop a comment and write, "Follow the money." Now I want to go even deeper into who actually benefits from all of this. because once you see the structure, you can't unsee it. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a business model, and it's hiding in plain sight. Imagine a pyramid. At the bottom, you have taxpayers, the people funding the entire operation without really understanding where their money goes. In the middle, you have government officials, the ones who approve the budgets and sign the contracts. And at the top, you have a small group of corporations and financial institutions that capture the majority of the wealth. This isn't theory. This is documented, verifiable reality. Just 5 companies control the majority of defense spending in the United States: Lockheed Martin, RTX, Boeing, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman. Between them, they received over $770 billion in contracts in just 5 years. That's more than the GDP of most countries. But here's where it gets really dark. It's not just that these companies are making money. It's how deeply embedded they are in the decision-making process itself. There's a term for it, and once you hear it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. It's called the revolving door. Between 2008 and 2018, nearly 400 high-ranking Pentagon officials left their government positions and immediately went to work for the exact same defense contractors they had been awarding contracts to. Generals retire on a Friday and start collecting paychecks from missile manufacturers on Monday. Former Secretary of Defense officials become board members at Raytheon. Deputy Assistant Secretaries become lobbyists for Lockheed Martin. This creates a situation where the people making strategic military decisions aren't asking, what keeps America safe? They're asking, what keeps the contracts flowing? Because their future income depends on it. Their stock options depend on it. Their entire post-government career depends on maintaining the system exactly as it is. This is what some analysts have called a mutual extortion racket. The government needs the expertise of industry insiders, so they hire former executives. The corporations need access to government decision-makers, so they hire former officials. And once you're inside that loop, your incentive isn't to win wars quickly or avoid them altogether. Your incentive is to make sure the pipeline never shuts off. Every delayed project is more consulting fees. Every cost overrun is more profit. Every new threat assessment is another reason to greenlight the next $100 billion weapons system, and Wall Street loves every second of it. Studies have shown that defense stocks consistently outperform the market during periods of geopolitical tension. When the news starts talking about rising threats, stock prices for companies like Lockheed and Raytheon spike. Investors don't profit from peace. They profit from instability. So there's a perverse financial incentive built into the system that rewards conflict over diplomacy, tension over resolution. If your doctor made more money the longer you stayed sick, you'd question every diagnosis. But when it comes to national security, we're told to trust the system without asking who profits from keeping us afraid. This is the hidden truth behind every military budget vote, every authorization for the use of force, every decision to stay in a conflict for another year, another decade. The people making those decisions are often the same people who will be cashing checks from the companies that benefit. It's not corruption in the traditional sense. It's structural. It's legal. And that's what makes it so dangerous. If you're connecting the dots, drop a comment and write, "The system is the scam." Now I want to go even deeper into what you can actually do about this, because awareness without action is just frustration. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that one person can dismantle a $1 trillion machine overnight. But what you can do is stop participating in it blindly. You can start making decisions with your eyes open. And when enough people do that, the system starts to crack. The first step is demanding transparency. Right now, the Pentagon operates with almost zero accountability. They fail audits year after year, and nothing happens. No consequences, no reforms, just another budget increase. So support movements like Audit the Pentagon. Make it a litmus test for the politicians you vote for. If a federal agency cannot account for trillions of dollars in assets, its funding should be frozen until it can. That's not radical. That's basic accountability. Push for legislation that limits the revolving door, laws that prevent former government officials from immediately lobbying for the same companies they were supposed to be regulating. Some of these bills already exist, like the Fighting Foreign Influence Act, but they need public pressure to actually pass and be enforced. Second, and this is something you can do today, vote with your wallet. Most people have no idea what's inside their retirement accounts. You contribute to a 401k or an ETF, and you assume it's just a diversified basket of stocks. But if you actually open the holdings and look at what you're invested in, there's a good chance you're funding the exact companies we've been talking about. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. Your money is being used to buy shares in corporations that profit from conflict. And every time those stocks go up because tensions rise somewhere in the world, you're technically benefiting from that instability. So take 15 minutes and check what you're actually invested in. If you see those names and it doesn't sit right with you, there are funds that exclude defense contractors. They exist. You just have to look for them. This isn't about being political. It's about being intentional with where your money goes and what it supports. Third, and maybe most important, develop a healthy skepticism toward the narratives you're fed. Every time the news starts beating the war drums, every time a new enemy is introduced, every time you hear that we need to increase military readiness or face some existential threat, ask yourself one question: who benefits from this? Who is the vendor for this conflict? What companies are about to see their stock prices jump? What think tanks funded by defense contractors are writing the policy, papers that justify intervention? Recognizing the sales pitch is the best way to avoid buying the product. And that doesn't mean you become cynical or apathetic. It just means you stop accepting things at face value. You start asking the second-level questions. You start following the money. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. You stop being a passive participant in a system that uses your fear and your tax dollars to enrich a small group of people, and you start becoming someone who sees through it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every headline, every budget debate, every military intervention starts to look different. You start to notice the patterns. You start to recognize the language. And that awareness, shared widely enough, is the beginning of real transformation. If you're ready to stop funding what you don't believe in, drop a comment and write, "I'm taking control." If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. Most people will scroll past this kind of content because it's uncomfortable. It challenges the story we've been told our entire lives. But you stayed, you listened, you followed the thread all the way to the end, and that tells me something about you. You're not looking for easy answers or comforting lies.
You're looking for the truth, even when it's hard to hear. And that matters more than you know. Eisenhower warned us decades ago about the disastrous rise of misplaced power. He saw this coming. And today, that power is more entrenched than ever, hiding behind classified budgets, failed audits, and a media that never asks the right questions. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And now that you've seen it, you're part of a different conversation.
You're part of the group that refuses to stay asleep. So here's what I want from you. If this video connected with you, if it made something click that you couldn't quite put into words before, hit that subscribe button. This channel exists to pull back the curtain on systems that don't want to be seen, and your support is what keeps it going. Drop a like if this was worth your time, and most importantly, let me know you're with me. Comment below with the phrase, "I see the machine." I want to know who's awake. I want to know who's paying attention. And if you want to keep going down this path, if you want to understand how this same logic applies to the Federal Reserve and the way banks control the currency in your pocket, there's a video right here that connects those dots. It picks up where this one leaves off. Click it, and I'll see you there.